There's an explosive new showdown tonight over the Obama health care law. We know the question of whether the law is constitutional will be settled ultimately by the Supreme Court. And there are new requests today from Republican governors and Virginia's Attorney General for the court to expedite that review. Most court watchers see Justice Anthony Kennedy as the likely tiebreaker if the high court's traditional divide, right-left, plays out. But what if conservative Clarence Thomas recused himself? 76 House Democrats sent the Justice Department a letter today demanding he do just that. They cite the lobbying and other political work done by Virginia Thomas for prominent opponents of the health care law and write that it poses, his wife's work does, quote, a strong conflict. The lead author of the letter, New York's Anthony Weiner, joins us now. Also rejoining us from Atlanta, CNN contributor Eric Erickson. Congressman, to you first. Very rare for judges to recuse themselves. You decided to send this letter. There are those on your side who will say it's a valid legal argument, and as you know, there will be conservatives who will say it's a political stunt.
Well, you know, your viewers can take a look yourself. This is a pretty simple call if you look at the law, and we've started a website, conflictedclarencethomas.com, where we're going to post the actual U.S. code that says when a judge must recuse himself. And I'm going to read you the exact language. He knows that he individually or his spouse or minor child has a financial interest in the subject matter in controversy. There is now no dispute that Mrs. Thomas did to the magnitude of about $685,000. The only question here is whether or not Justice Thomas goes ahead and takes that step. I just want to correct your intro. We wrote to Justice Thomas and saying, listen, given the facts of this case that are now clear, although they weren't originally disclosed as they were supposed to be by law, now we know them. It's a pretty simple question in the eyes of the law that this guy does indeed have a financial interest in the outcome of this case, and for that reason he should recuse himself.
Eric, what the congressman's talking about is the justice did, as you know, recently resubmit his financial disclosure forms because he had left off his wife's income. That money the congressman's talking about came from the Heritage Foundation, which opposes the Obama health care law. The justice said it was an oversight. He didn't understand the directions on the form. But I want you to weigh in, Eric. But first I want you to listen to Ginny Thomas, because this is a fascinating question. She is very active politically. She worked at the Heritage Foundation. She also has been involved in Tea Party associated groups. Listen to her speaking here at the Steamboat Institute back in August.
I think we need to repeal Obamacare. We need to repeal the Dodd-Frank bill before it gets hold. I think we need to sunset programs all over the place. I think we need to freeze government employment and cap their salary at some comparable level to the private sector.
A somewhat predictable, if you will, I don't mean that in a bad way, list of conservative goals, Eric, but I think we need to repeal Obamacare. Her husband gets a key vote.
Fascinating. This may be the first time the Democrats have ever asserted that a woman can't have a job separate from her husband and live her own life separately. That is fascinating. You know, I suspect none of the members of Congress who signed this letter will also sign a letter to Elena Kagan urging her to step down, since she was Solicitor General up until she got on the Supreme Court and after this litigation started working its way through the process. And, you know, looking at some of these members of Congress who signed the letter, I mean, Congressman Weiner, yourself, your wife works for the State Department. You've never recused yourself from the State Department budget when that money ultimately winds its way into your wife's paycheck. This is all political.
Congressman, address that.
Well, let me just say this. There is a reason the law refers to the spouse of a judge. The judges have a different level of authority than I do in this case. Whatever the Supreme Court rules, you know, under lower courts, if a lower court gets something wrong or someone's unduly influenced, that's the grounds for an appeal to a higher court. Where do we go in the case of the Supreme Court? This is the law of the land that he has to recuse himself in this case. Now, I have to say, frankly, this is not just the Heritage Foundation. She was the CEO of a lobbying firm who claimed on their website to have great influence over the outcome of the health care law. If this is not a case of the appearance of conflict, I don't know what is. And by the way, let me just say this, $685,000, if it came into my household, would I check no on the form, a legal form saying there's no income for my wife? I doubt it. He should recuse himself, and I think people who go to conflictedclarencethomas.com can see all these documents plain and clear.
It's an interesting debate. We will stay on top of it, and we'll explore the Kagan connection too. Interesting as this case makes its way through the court. Congressman Weiner, thank you for your time. Eric Erickson as well. When we come back.